Hi, and welcome to Watchmen on the Pod. I am Nikki. I'm going to fill in for Pam on the book reading The Secret History of the Jesuits by Edmond Paris. We're on chapter 19. It's titled The Jesuits in Rome, the Syllabus. One can read in a book from the Abbey Burgretti the following passage in the chapter entitled The Clergy under the Second Empire. Particular devotions, old or new, were honored more and more at the time when Romanticism still exalted the senses to the determent of Austrian reason. The worship of saints and their relics, restrained for so long by the cold breath of rationalism, had taken a new vigor. The worship of the Holy Virgin, thanks to apparitions at La Salette and Lourdes, acquired an extraordinary popularity. Pilgrimages to these places, privileged by miracles, multiplied. The French episcopate favored new devotions. It warmly and thankfully welcomed. In 1854, the encyclical letter of Pius IX, proclaiming the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. It was also the episcopate brought together in Paris. In 1856, for the baptism of the imperial prince, who asked Pius IX that the Feast of the Scarlet Heart should be made into a solemn feast of the Universal Church. These few lines clearly show the predominant influence exercised by the Jesuits under the Second Empire, in France as much as over the Holy See. As we saw earlier on, they were and remain the great propagators of these particular devotions, old or new. This perceptible and almost sensual piety made the masses excessively scrupulous in religious matters, especially women. As far as that is concerned, we must admit they were realists. The time had gone, already under Napoleon III, when the public as a whole, the learned and the ignorant, took a deep interest in theological questions. Intellectually, catechism had ended its career. It is, then, more by necessity than because of their formation that the sons of Loyola endeavored, during the 19th century and today, to awaken superstitious religiosity, especially among women who make up most of the flock. This was to counterbalance rationalism. For the secondary education of girls, the order promoted the founding of several congregations of women. The most famous and active was the Congregation des Dames du Sacré-Cœur. In 1830, it comprised 105 houses with 4,700 teachers, and its influence over the higher classes was very important. As far as the worship of Mary is concerned, which was always so dear to the Jesuits, it was greatly helped under the Second Empire by the very opportune apparitions of the Virgin to the little shepherdess of Lourdes. This happened 2 years after Pius IX promulgated the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, 1854. At the instigation of the Company of Jesus, the main acts of this pontificate were all victories for the Jesuits, whose all powerful influence over the Roman Curia affirmed itself more and more. In 1864, Pius IX published the encyclical letter Quanta Cura, accompanied by the syllabus, which, at anathemized the best political principles of the contemporary societies. Anathema on that on all that is dear to modern France. Modern France wants the independence power. Modern France wants the liberty of conscience and liberty of worship. The syllabus teaches that the Roman Catholic has the right to use force and reinstate the Inquisition. Modern France acknowledges the existence of several types of worship. The syllabus declares that the Catholic religion must be considered as the only religion of the state, and all others are excluded. Modern France proclaims that the people are sovereign. The syllabus condemns universal suffrage. Modern France professes that all French people are equal before the law. The syllabus affirms that the ecclesiastics are exempt from ordinary civil and criminal tribunals. These are the doctrines taught by the Jesuits in their own colleges. They are the front of the army of counter-revolution. Their mission consists of bringing up the youth, put in their care with a hatred for the principles on which French society rests, principles laid down by former generations at a great cost. By their teaching, they try to divide France into two and call into question all that has been done since 1789. We want harmony, they want strife. We want peace, they want war. We want France to be free, they want her enslaved. They are a combatant society receiving its orders from outside. They are frightening us. No, sorry. They are fighting us. Let us defend ourselves. They threaten us. Let us disarm them. The Holy See's everlasting pretension to dominate civil society was then affirmed, as Renan had already said in 1848 in an article entitled Clerical Liberalism. It demonstrated that the people's sovereignty, the liberty of conscience, and all modern liberties were condemned by the Church. It presented the Inquisition as the logical consequence of the whole Orthodox system, as the summary of the Church's spirit. It added, when she will be able to, the Church will bring back the Inquisition. If she doesn't do it, it's because she cannot do it. The power of the Jesuits over the Vatican was shown even more strongly a few years after the syllabus, when the dogma of pontifical infallibility was promulgated. The Abbé Bergetti wrote that this dogma was to throw over the tragic years of 1870 to 1871, which put France into mourning, the brightness of a great Christian hope. The same author added, one can say that during the first half of the year, 1870, the Church of France was not in France anymore. She was in Rome, passionately busy with the General Council, which Pius IX had just called at the Vatican. According to Monsignor Pie, this French clergy had completely thrown off its own liveries, maxims, and French or Gallic liberties. The Bishop of Poitiers added that it was done as a sacrifice to the principle of authority, sound doctrine, and common right. It placed all that under the feet of the sovereign pontiff, made a throne of it for him, and sounded the trumpet, saying, the Pope is our king. Not only is his will our command, but his wishes are our rules. The resignation of a whole national clergy into the hands of a Roman cura is clear enough, and because of it, the subjection of the French Catholics to the will of a foreign despot who under the cover of dogma and morals, was going to impose on them this political directions without any opposition. The liberal Catholics protested in vain against the exorbitant pretension of the Holy See to dictate its laws in the name of the Holy Spirit. The Abbé Borghetti informs us their head, M.D. Montalembert, published in the Gazette de France an article in which he vehemently protested against those who sacrifice justice and truth, reason and history to the idol they set up in the Vatican. Several notorious bishops, such as Fathers Hyacinth Loison and Gratry, took the same line, the latter not without spirit. Father Gratry said he published successfully his 4 letters to Monsignor Descamps. In them, he did not merely discuss historical events, such as the condemnation of Pope Honorius, who, according to him, opposed the proclamation of pontifical infallibility, but, in a sharp and bitter manner, he denounced also the contempt of authoritative Catholics for the truth and scientific integrity. One of them, an ecclesiastical candidate for the doctorate of theology, even dared to justify false decretals before the faculty of Paris, declaring that it was not an odious fraud. And Gratry added, even today it is being started that Galileo's condemnation was opportune. Ye men of little faith, with miserable hearts and sordid souls, your tricks are scandalous. On the day when the great science of nature was raised above the world, you condemned it. Do not be surprised if men, before forgiving you, expect from you confession, penance, deep contrition, and amends for your faults. No need to say that the Jesuits, inspiring agents of Pius IX and all powerful over the council, were not anxious about confession, penance, contrition, or reparation at the time when they almost reached the goal they had set themselves at the Council of Trent in the middle of the 16th century. At that time, Lanes already supported the idea of papal infallibility. It only meant consecrating as a dogma a pretension nearly as old as the papacy itself. No other council until then had been willing to ratify it, but the time seemed just right. Then, besides, the patient work of the Jesuits had prepared the national clergy for the surrender of their last liberties, the imminent collapse of the Pope's temporal power. It happened before the council voted